Gunfire, CNN Saturday night, 8 Eastern. Will we ever get the internet and phone service we need?
Larry.
I can't do anything from the road.
Larry, listen.
And our phone company thinks everything is just fine.
Larry, we're switching to Time Warner Cable Business Class.
That's a weight off my shoulders.
Is your phone company weighing you down? Switch to Time Warner Cable Business Class for tailored solutions that fit your business. Get phone for 3 months free when you bundle with internet.
Taking the medication Zoloft while pregnant can increase the risk of birth defects. If you took Zoloft or other antidepressants while pregnant and your child was born with a heart defect, cleft palate, spina bifida, pulmonary hypertension, a clubbed foot, or other birth defect, you may have a claim. Studies show antidepressants can increase the risk of birth defects. If you took Zoloft or another antidepressant while you were pregnant and your child was born with a birth defect, call 1-800-BAD-DRUG now for a free consultation.
Comedy legend Carol Burnett for the hour. Piers Morgan, CNN tonight, 9 Eastern.
There's a lot happening in Libya's civil war. Within the past hour, our crews in Tripoli report hearing new airstrikes and at least 3 major explosions. NATO has warned all Libyan civilians to stay away from military areas, which may foreshadow a new round of airstrikes, and that may include precision strikes by unmanned U.S. drones.
Now, the president has said that where we have some unique capabilities, he is willing to use those, and in fact, he has approved the use of armed predators. And I think that today may in fact have been their first mission.
In the west, the rebels captured a key border crossing with Tunisia. About 100 pro-Gaddafi fighters, including a high-ranking officer, fled into Tunisia, where some have been detained. A few hours ago, a ship carrying about 1,000 migrant workers rescued from the siege of Misrata arrived in Benghazi. Also aboard that ship, the bodies of those 2 photojournalists killed yesterday in Misrata. CNN's Reza Saya is in Benghazi. Reza, hi, we know the bodies of Tim Hetherington and Chris Hondros arrived in Benghazi today. CNN was there. Will you tell us what you saw, and did the Libyan government address the journalists' deaths in any way?
Well, a regime official, a Gaddafi regime spokesperson, earlier today in Tripoli came out and he said he was saddened by the loss of the journalists, but he added that it's not clear who killed these journalists, whether it was rebel forces or regime forces. Here in Benghazi tonight, when the remains of Tim Hetherington and Chris Hondros arrived at the port, there were 2 opposition officials present that didn't make an announcement to the gathering, but in private they did tell reporters that they too were saddened by the loss of these 2 journalists, and they said this is an example of what they call atrocities that are taking place every day in Misrata. When these aid ships usually come to the port of Benghazi from Misrata, and we've seen a few, it's usually a very raucous, emotional, and loud event. Oftentimes you have cheers and chants of God is great, gunfire in honor of those injured on board. But tonight it was a much more subdued and somber event. We had about 300 people out there greeting the ship, holding British and American flags with signs. One sign read, "We share with your pain." There were some officials there who said that what's happening in Misrata is an example of why we need the international community to act right now without trying to create the impression that they're exploiting this situation. So an emotional event here in the port of Benghazi.
And speaking to that today, Secretary Clinton counseled patience in Libya. She said that opposition fighters are holding their own. Is that consistent with the reality on the ground, or is it looking more grim for the rebels?
Well, I wouldn't say things are looking grim for the rebels. They have up and down days. They have days like today when Washington came out and announced that they have plans to use unmanned drones. That's certainly giving them a boost, but there's absolutely no reason to believe that all of a sudden this is a rebel force that can now achieve a military victory over the Gaddafi army. And for that matter, there's no reason to believe that the Gaddafi military can achieve a military victory over the rebel forces. And I think that's why all eyes are on the international community, NATO. They could be the decisive factor here, but many observers say they haven't made that decisive move, that decision that will give the edge to one side or the other. And I think that's why a lot of people are concerned that there's no end in sight to this conflict here in Libya.
Sounds like you're describing stalemate without further action. Reza Saya reporting for us. Thank you. To talk about the apparent stalemate in Libya, I'm joined by CNN's Fareed Zakaria. Hi, Fareed. There's news today, as you know, that rebels have seized an important border crossing near Tunisia, and there's also word of major defections among Gaddafi's forces. In theory, this is how the tide turns. Is it happening?
I think there's no question that Gaddafi is feeling somewhat cornered. The most important news that I've been able to ascertain is that he is having difficulty selling his oil. You're beginning to see this military dynamic work against him. Now that can reverse, military dynamics can sometimes shift week to week. But in general, I think he was hoping that he would have some kind of dramatic victory over the last few weeks, and he hasn't had one. So the rebels have been able to hold what they have. In fact, as you point out, expand a little bit their presence. He's having difficulty with oil. He's having difficulty getting money, all of which suggests that the noose is tightening. It may not be so tight that he's going to surrender anytime soon, but for all the problems with the mission for the Allies, life is pretty hard for Muammar Gaddafi himself.
You wrote in Time magazine that the most significant challenge for Barack Obama is to keep America's military involvement limited. If Gaddafi does not fall immediately, the response, you wrote, should not be to escalate. But now we know Europeans want to send in advisors. Some are concerned that leads to a ground war. The U.S. will send $25 million in aid. And now Mitt Romney, a likely presidential candidate here, is calling this mission creep. Do you agree? Is this mission creep?
No, and I think that you really have to wonder about some of these Republican candidates who first wanted Obama to get more involved earlier. Then when he got involved,